The future of progressive radio. This is the Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live Wednesday, February 20th. In studio right now, it is our friend, Julian Zelizer, professor at Princeton University, author of hundreds of books at this point, and CNN political contributor. Nice to see you in studio. You can watch it on Facebook.com/Dean of Radio if you want to actually see our mouths move while hearing the sound at the same time. There you go. Julian, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in on crappy weather. It's crappy here in New York. Not nearly as bad as other parts of the storm path. We're pretty good over here. And quick things, I told Julian during the break, we just found out that Jussie Smollett, we had covered it in the past, obviously, when they were reporting about how horrific it was. Last night I had Danny Savalas on, the lawyer, and we talked about the legal implications and also potentially if he had lied, and we didn't say he did, but if he did, what would happen? Well, just minutes ago, Jussie Smollett was charged with making a false report to the police in Chicago. So, and in today's day and age, Julian, everything seems political. And I guess that case was political because there was an allegation, there was a MAGA hat, and they yelled something about Trump country and stuff like that. And what's odd, I didn't have any doubts at the time. There was no reason to doubt it. He makes his report. The police are saying it's confirmed by the police. But for some reason, it oddly reminded me of a case in New York with a person who said they were abused by the police, who told them, this is Giuliani time, this isn't Dinkins time anymore. And it turned out that happened to be a fake case as well, and a hoax case. But, I mean, is there any political... how do you think the politics of this is, other than Don Jr. being very happy today and being a jerk about it on Twitter?
Well, that's the politics. I mean, these are serious issues. One case like this doesn't mean that all the other hate crimes and racist attacks are not very real, and that the spike in these is not very real. And the unfortunate effect of this happening and his doing this, if that's what happened, is it gives fodder to people who say this is exaggerated, it's overblown, why devote resources to this? And that's a really terrible outcome. And it undercuts people who came out and said this is what it looks like, and now they have to deal with this.
You know, I think, or there was a Trump yelling thing about it gives them this fodder to be like, well, how do I know? You know, you could be lying and that kind of thing, like the other guy. And we're going to hear that over and over and over.
Yeah. And the hate crime's real. So the persistence of hate crime is not some myth. And this really has nothing to do with the broader trends and problems we have. And that's really important for people to focus on. And he is a star, so it's in this exceptional case we all focus on. As this was happening, I'm sure we could find in the last few weeks examples of very real crimes that happen, hate crimes. And so, but this is how the media works. And I don't know why he did this or what happened. But
none of us know, because even the reporting, the speculation, I don't want to get into it at this point because I have no clue what is going on. So we'll let the investigation go. Yep. It's funny, some conservatives will call up, but I'll see they're in the queue. Why don't you talk about Jussie Smollett? I'm like, because first of all, we talked last night. And second of all, as stories develop, you wait for new news. I wanted to talk about the white supremacist terrorist who was arrested right before the show. At least it was announced. I don't know when he was arrested, but that on his list to kill were people like Van Jones and Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon. And Democrats, many that Donald Trump has attacked by name, Richard Blumenthal. And you have that. I'm like, that's breaking news. That's compelling. I talk about that first, and we talk about other issues later. Let's talk about Trump today's tweet. It intersects a little bit with the story of the terrorist plot, because some of it was going after the media. But obviously this tweet is from today. There were other tweets similar. Today, Donald Trump, though, tweeted, specifically, the New York Times reporting is full. For NBC. And he goes, they should be looked into. And then minutes later, he tweets suggesting SNL is part of the enemy of the people, saying, the rigged and corrupt media is the enemy of the people. Other presidents have attacked the media. Is Trump at a different level because of Twitter? Or is this run-of-the-mill stuff that I'm just not used to from years ago?
No, this is different. And lots of presidents have attacked the media, for sure. Nixon really went after the media, accusing them of partisan reporting and also suggesting, they were out to get him. And he had his enemies list secretly where he wanted to isolate certain people. but presidents in both parties are critical. Remember, George W. Bush said something about a New York Times reporter. It was caught on a hot mic where he cursed at him and said he's an a-hole. And you have examples like that. And Obama complained about the treatment of the press. This is different in that he's really portraying the press as treasonous. He's using language that's loaded enemy of the people, which if you are a supporter of President Trump and if you're an unstable supporter, you could easily move to a very bad place with that kind of language. And he does it. It's not a one-time thing. It's not as if he said it, criticized, he said bad use of words. He keeps coming back to it. And so at a certain point, we know it's intentional.
I want to play a clip for you. It's only like a 30-second clip. It happened at the El Paso rally last week, where it's from the BBC reporter who gets roughed up. And the first part is just kind of a scuffling sound. But I want you to hear the crowd's reaction. I'll set it up so you know exactly what happens. In the middle of the Trump speech, a guy with a MAGA hat jumps up, young man, attacks this BBC reporter. And other people pull him off, and then they're holding him, either security or other reporters. And then you can hear the crowd reaction. And I want you to tell me honestly, does that sound like any political rally you've heard before? And be honest. Here's clip number 6. I feel like Tucker Carlson.
Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans have reached the lowest level in the history of our country.
They're cheering, let him go, because he had a MAGA hat, but he clearly roughed up the reporter in front of everyone to the point where Trump stopped his speech. And listen to that crowd. It doesn't sound, I'm not being partisan, it doesn't sound like a rally. It sounds like a mob, which with a little bit more prodding could do something scarier. That's the only thing I'm going to say without going further. What do you hear there?
It's terrifying. There was a documentary on the New York Times that came out last year, I think, and they have one of the best scenes is in the pit where the press is at one of his rallies, and you see it from the perspective of the reporters. And it's anger and potential violence clearly looking at them. And this has been a consistent part of the rallies. This is a main theme for him. He's like a professional wrestler, and this is his main villain. And he keeps coming back. But you're talking about real people. The only times I've seen this, George Wallace, who ran in 1968, his rallies were like this. He was a Southern Democrat, racist, but he loved to rile up the crowds, talk about violence. And Sarah Palin, who, when she ran in 2008 as VP, talked about the lamestream media and really got her. You could see Christine Pelosi, I think, made a movie about her rallies, and she captures the same kind of thing. He's amped it up. You're talking about an incumbent president at this point to very new levels. But what you hear is potentially dangerous. You have that. You have the bigger question: is he questioning the legitimacy of the media? But then you have a very different question: is he potentially inciting violence?
And it's a discussion we had. And, there was Donald Trump, and the reporter gets tackled. Trump sees him. The BBC reporter says he gave him a thumbs up, which was a nice moment for Trump. But Trump at that moment did not do what you should do as a leader and tell the crowd there's no place for attacking. He could even say, I hate the media, but we shouldn't hit them. And he could make a joke about it, but at least he'd send that message. But he didn't. He chose to be silent about that. And it has to, in my mind, that is just calculated. Donald Trump does not want to lose his base. He wants them to be as feverish, as rabid as they possibly can be. And if some people happen to get hurt, I think it's acceptable losses in the view of Donald Trump.
I agree. I mean, I don't think it's implausible to think that. And when someone says you can't just say that about the president or imply it, again, you have to keep coming back to the fact he keeps doing it, despite the warnings, despite real threats of violence that have happened, like that attempted bomb.
The MAGA bomb. We talked about him earlier in the show.
So then you're doing it 2 years later. You can't say he doesn't have a purpose when he's doing this. And that's a choice he's making, and it's a dangerous one.
So in American history, the closest is George Wallace.
I think George Wallace was close. His rallies, like at Madison Square Garden, which also were filled with Nazis and white supremacists. they were often literally violent. People would be fighting, but he liked to rile up the crowd. It's a very similar technique, very different. Nixon did, he did go after the media and went after his opponents, but he didn't intentionally or looked like intentionally really, incite people and that element of fear.
Does world history tell us, without bringing up Germany in 1930s stuff, but are there things, I mean, you're a historian, I know a political historian, but you've read other history as well. At what point should it be, forget politics, that we should really be concerned that this could go to something bigger?
We're at it.
We are? Yeah. Okay, folks. Well, just tuning in. We're at that moment now.
Let me clarify. Look, there's a whole group of historians, reporters who say this is the beginning of another totalitarian era, and we're seeing the kind of tactics you saw in Nazi Germany or in Italy. I don't think we're actually there, because I think whatever he's about, there's a lot of institutions in this country that still are very much in place, that check him, that contain him. Popular opinion's not on his side, and it's definitely not going up. So there's a lot of reason to think he's not going there. Nor is he really, particularly smart in terms of strategy. And I'm not sure, what he does with his anger and rage.
If he had a 65% approval rating, would you be more concerned?
Yeah, if it was going
the same
up,
guy.
And if the courts were providing zero check, and I know Congress didn't under the Republicans, although now you have shifting control and you have Democrats starting to step up. So there are institutions that are working. It doesn't mean they'll work, but we're a far way, in my opinion, from a totalitarian system. I think this is more dangerous for what's very apparent. He might incite someone to do something violent because of the language he used. You remember in the Tree of Life shooting, the shooter used his language about the caravan. Right. And that's the kind of thing that we have to watch for.
I'm, early in the show, I went through how concerned I was about as we get into the 2020 cycle and passions really get elevated.
Yeah.
Because history has shown us, and it's something that I learned in 2014, actually, that around presidential elections that are highly contentious, there often is a spike in hate crimes against minorities. It's kind of weird, but this happened. And we happened very big time, 2015, 16. I'm concerned as we get closer to 2020, where I've gotten emails from some on the right threatening, even this week, and I wrote defending SNL. I got an email about civil wars coming, And the guy today who was arrested had been Googling, I don't know if you saw it, actually, the indictment. In the indictment, it talked about things that he had Googled. The man who was arrested, who was a Trump supporter, said things like, I'm trying to look at the exact words so I get it right here and not just, okay. One of the things he Googled is, what if Trump illegally impeached? Second, civil war if Trump impeached. So Googling civil war if Trump impeached is probably looking for others who share that. And what are others writing about this and saying about this? How can I connect with them? And that kind of stuff. I'm not really fearful of a true civil war, but I'm really fearful as we get more into 2020, we're going to see political violence. But our country's had political violence. We're just not used to it today.
Well, we are. I mean, in the mid-'90s, you saw that was when the big spike in white extremist groups, white nationalist extremist groups starts. It's right around the Oklahoma City bombing of a federal government building by people associated with these organizations, and Clinton cracked down. The environment there was pretty toxic. If you go back to the 90s, talk radio in the late 90s, mid-90s was spewing all kind of hateful ideas. The president they were accusing of being a killer, and a
was that because Waco happened?
No, about Waco, but Vincent Foster, who was
Vince Foster, right?
His death, he committed suicide, and there was this conspiracy theory out there, which Ken Starr actually spent time investigating, that he was murdered, and that the murder had something to do with it. So you had these kinds of arguments about Clinton. You had real white extremism, and you had one of the biggest domestic terrorism acts happen. People should remember that. This stuff can get very real very quickly, and then we look back and how did we escalate the rhetoric that much? And so I'm hoping we're not there, but to discount it is foolish.
Today, it's funny you bring this up. Not funny is not the right word. Eerie. Today, the Southern Poverty Law Center came out with their annual hate group list. I don't know if you saw it.
No.
Today, the count of active groups espousing hate climbed to 1,020 from 784 4 years ago. And the biggest jump is in white supremacist, white nationalist groups. So and if you look at the chart, it's just, I'm looking at it right now, it's just crazy. Like it went down and went up. It was in 2000, it was down to like 450.
Yeah.
Now we're over 1,000. And primarily they're white nationalist, white supremacist groups now. This is building.
It's building. It's the problem. You have a president and parts of his party that are willing to play to this for whatever reason. That's going to have an effect. You also have the fact they're on the losing side of where the country's been going. That's what fuels the anger even more. They're not representative of a majority of the country. They don't represent ideas that reflect the population anymore, the values anymore. So I think they're kind of doubling down in this defensive moment, and they're doing it right when they have these political leaders, Stephen King and people in the White House, who are willing to use their rhetoric and stir up the pot.
And Trump has still not denounced Steve King.
Right?
Still not.
Right.
Because he wasn't following that. He watches TV all day. Trump's presidency is like television interrupted by a press conference and a tweet here and there. It literally is television's playtime all day, and every now and then a public appearance and lunch, a couple of cheeseburgers, Diet Coke.
It's like a teenager, basically. Right.
The worst teenager ever.
Right.
Like, you want some parents involved. So let's talk about, there was breaking news that we might get the Mueller report as early as next week. We might. And I went through before you came on some of the regulations controlling that, so people are aware of the DOJ. And really, Bill Barr is going to have so much leeway in this. This is pure speculation, but if it comes back and just says, I'll give you one scenario. It comes back and says, no Russian collusion, but Trump obstruction. Do you think Trump goes, victory? There was no collusion and the obstruction's all fake news? That kind of thing?
If it says there was collusion, he would claim victory. I think that's clear by now.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the report says in terms of his response. Whatever it says, it will either be fake or it will prove, in his words, what he was saying all along. So that won't really be the measure. The measure will be, does whatever is in the report, and it might not be public next week, or he might not give a complete accounting. It seems like this is an initial report about what he's been doing. The key is what happens in Congress. That's the only mechanism that could move if the report is damaging. And it has to be bad enough to shake some Republicans, and it has to be bad enough to convince Democrats in the House, let's go all in on a process now of investigation.
By the way, next week Trump is going to North Korea. Perhaps he's fleeing the jurisdiction. He knew the report was coming. No, but Julian, here is a tough thing for Democrats. Say it comes out and say he uses the language like Ken Starr does. The idea of credible information that it's, I'm looking at the exact language here so you can see. It was substantial and credible information that President Clinton committed acts that may constitute grounds for an impeachment. That was exact Ken Starr. And he detailed 11 counts in unbelievable specificity. Say they do that for Trump, but find no conspiracy, but they find, say, 2 or 3 counts of obstruction and maybe some Federal Election Commission law violations or something. How can the Democrats not do their job and have impeachment hearings? At least have the hearings. That's their job.
I think even without the report, there is more than enough to make the argument that the House has a responsibility to, at a minimum, conduct a full-scale committee investigation with Watergate-like hearings and decide if the next step is necessary. The impeachment process doesn't mean you impeach. It means you investigate whether there is enough material for an impeachment. So Congress has gotten this all wrong. The Republicans protected him, and Democrats have gone along with this theory. And it's not really up to Robert Mueller. But in terms of obstruction, there's more than enough evidence just from what he did in public to be reaching a conclusion that he did there. And now we have a New York Times story that says behind the scenes he was actually working on stifling the investigation.
With the Republicans and Matthew Whitaker.
You have high-level officials like Manafort who have now pled guilty and have been brought in, Michael Flynn, into connections with Russia as they were meddling. There's more than enough material already for Congress. I don't know if they will. They might not. But that there's no question that this is Watergate-like material.
I'm working on a book, All the President's Con Men. That's my idea for a book.
That's a good one.
It's going to be, look, you got Tom Steyer, he was on TV yesterday, spending millions of dollars to force Democrats to talk about impeachment. He's even threatening to primary Jerry Nadler, which is not going to happen. It's in New York, folks. You really can't get left of Gerald Nadler that I can know of. So in any event, the political calculation should not come into this. If the evidence is there, they have to have, and you're right, it's hearings. And again, impeachment equals indictment. The trial's in the Senate.
Yep.
So I would hope that they can make a compelling case to any open-minded person that this guy's committed crimes, and look what he's done, and you lay it out during the impeachment hearings. In America, and you see public opinion go, 60% says he should be gone. And let's see what happens. All right, let's take a break, come back. We're going to talk about an article you wrote for CNN. Joe Biden is not the right Democratic candidate for 2020. So we'll talk about that and Bernie Sanders raising a lot of money. And what does this all mean with Julian Zelizer right after this?
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Whoever's the next president, we should call him the 45th president of the United States. And this will go down as a dark time in America that we'll never refer to again.
SiriusXM Progress.
Back to the Dean Obeidallah Show on SiriusXM Progress.
And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here, Wednesday, February 20th. In studio, our friend Julian Zelizer from CNN is here. So, Julian, I want to talk about your article on Biden, but first let's talk about Bernie Sanders for a second. And not just the money he raised last night, but this was on Colbert, and in it's actually a clip of Bernie. And I think ultimately Bernie's legacy is here forever because of this, what happens here and what this conversation here. Let's hear clip number 3, please.
Bernie also feels vindicated because the rest of the Democratic candidates are jumping on his 2016 platform.
All of those ideas, people say, oh, Bernie, they're so radical. They are extreme. The American people just won't accept those ideas. Well, you know what's happened in over 3 years? All of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream.
So you're saying the party came your way?
Well, I don't want to say that. I think Most people would say that.
I don't want to say that. I think most people would say that. All I want to say is, how you like me now? Kiss my Vermont cheese balls.
So, but that to me is the legacy of Bernie. No matter what, he may win the nomination. I have no idea. Again, I'm not taking a position. I embrace all the progressives. I'm so proud of seeing this great field. But the things he ran on in 2016, which were dismissed many by Hillary Clinton at the time, are now fully embraced by some of the leading Democrats, his competitors, Kamala Harris, Liz Warren, Cory Booker. So no matter what, do you think Bernie Sanders has been the most transformative person in the Democratic Party, even more than Obama on some level in the last few years? Is that giving too much credit?
Yeah, that's too much.
Okay, fair enough. Stop me.
Obama won twice, and
Right.
he brought in this coalition of voters that's still very much what could defeat Donald Trump in 2020, and he had a lot of policies that are with us. So he has a big record, and policy matters as much as ideas, and for someone like myself. But he was very influential. Look, he injected all these ideas into the Democratic ecosystem that now have been embraced by, a Cory Booker who's pretty moderate on many issues, but you're hearing similar ideas. He helped create a movement within the party that I do think actually built on what Obama had done, but he re-energized them when Obama was finished in a way Clinton couldn't. Mm-hmm. And now they're ready. They're ready to roll for him or maybe for someone else. And just the diversity of the candidates now, I find really remarkable for the Democratic Party. Again, that's not all him, for sure. Right. But he pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable. He said, yeah, socialists can run and do pretty well and excite Democrats who weren't socialists. And I think that says a lot.
What does the fact that Bernie raised almost $6 million in the first 24 hours, and to give some context, the next closest was Senator Harris. She raised $1.5 million in the first 24 hours, and it went down from there. What does that say?
Well, it's a lot of money. I do think it's a measure of a certain amount of enthusiasm for him. It's far beyond what anyone else raised. Again, he was a known commodity. Right. So Harris isn't yet, and it could be in 2 months or 3 months she's generating that kind of excitement. It could be any of the candidates. You always have to remember that in these polls. But you shouldn't discount it. It's a lot of money. I don't know if it translates into votes, but it indicates a lot of it's small money, that there's a real base of passion for this person. And even if he's not the nominee, other Democrats should learn something about this, not just the ideas, but the way he ran, because that kind of loyalty can bring you the presidency.
And small donations are impressive to people, because I think his was like 200,000 people gave money.
$27 or something.
It's unreal. In this one, in this just last 24 hours as we sat here. Now, you wrote an article for CNN, which he told me in the break got a lot of pushback on. Former Vice President Joe Biden is not the right Democratic candidate for 2020. And how can you say that? I'm not supporting Biden or anything. I'm not supporting anyone, but he's leading in every poll of Democrats, but also in head-to-head to Trump. He's doing the best. And I know name recognition plays a role. So what's your beef with Joe Biden?
I worry about two things, and I'd have no problem with him running. The headline was different than what I said.
Of course, it's all Rich's fault.
But I'm not convinced he's the best. He's run many times before, and when he actually campaigns, he has not done well, and that has to be remembered. Either his gaffes or his inability to inspire real enthusiasm as the battle.
And he ran in 87 and in 2008.
Yeah. And
he dropped out in 87. I was watching on C-SPAN his speech, both his speech when he was running and then his speech when he dropped out.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see his speech. If you go back and watch on C-SPAN his speech when he was running in 87 for 88 nomination, right. He talked about some people saying you're too young to run. And it's so interesting. People say, my generation, we don't. And he's reminded me of Kennedy. Like he's very Kennedy-esque in his speaking. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's one. But two, I just think the Democrats have this really important moment right now, not only defeating President Trump, but they have a really unique range of candidates out there who are different in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of ideas than we've had in the Democratic Party in recent at all, period. And so here you're going to bring in the establishment, older white male, who will instantly tap down some of the attention for all these other candidates, and I'm not sure he can win. And so I think that's part of why I'm not convinced at all this is a good idea for the Democrats. I think some of these other candidates can beat Donald Trump. And I mean,
right now the polls, forget the poll, folks. When you look at the polls at some of the states, Donald Trump is winning all of them against people with no name recognition.
Right.
But at the same time, his approval rating is low. So it's a matter of a Democrat. But that's what's interesting, like how the midterm is just purely a referendum. And I know re-election tends to be a referendum, but there's also a binary choice involved. So you might not like the guy, whoever that did Trump, but you're like, oh, that person running against him is even worse. And you end up voting for Trump, let's say. And we hope that doesn't happen in this case. So we need a candidate that gives people a reason to have confidence in them, that they like their vision of America, not just that they're against Trump, but they have a vision. So Trump's attack on every Democrat is now, we're socialists. Democrats are socialists.
He'll do that whoever runs.
Right.
There
Even Joe Biden, though, that's a tough one for Biden.
In 10 seconds, that will be the attack. There is nothing that will stop the socialist attack from coming. Biden, Klobuchar, she'll be the socialist if she runs. So Democrats can't think that way. That's the wrong way to think. They have to think about who's the most attractive leader in terms of inspiring people and who has the best set of ideas at this moment, in addition to who's going to really run a tough campaign against this president and really give back everything he gives to them. That's the measure. You can't start predicting who's going to play better because once the playing field is set, this is going to get really rough. And I don't think Biden will be the moderate who President Trump stays away from. He'll go right after him.
I'll come up with some idiotic nicknames. Today for Bernie Sanders on Twitter, he called him Crazy Bernie Sanders. And Bernie just slammed them back like, you're a racist bigot. These nicknames are much better. Crazy is nothing compared to what we're going to call you. And Bernie said today, by the way, on the Young Turks with Cenk Uygur that he's going to pick a woman to be his VP. So he committed to that, which is kind of interesting this early. I saw an interview with Cory Booker on Rachel Maddow, and he goes, well, I would look to a woman first, but I don't want to make any commitments now. I thought it was interesting that Bernie went right away to say, I'm going to have a female vice president.
Well, look, it's a big vote. I mean, the female vote in the Democratic Party could turn the election. We saw it happen in the midterms. Democrats shouldn't forget that. Obviously, a male candidate or female candidate both have the chance to excite female voters. But again, don't discount what it would mean, again, to have a front runner who might be a better campaigner than Hillary Clinton, running for the party against this particular incumbent who's been so reactionary to many of the ideas that many Democrats hold dearly about gender and about family. And so I think that's important as well.
And there was something, and I think I may have mentioned last time you were here, there was a poll in Politico which, when talked to Democrats, about 55% said their number one priority is nominating someone who can beat Trump, even if they don't line up ideologically. While only about 30% of Democrats said, I care more if they line up with me than if they can beat Trump. So this pragmatism of beating Trump, and I bet you those numbers are going to even get more higher about Democrats going, this guy's horrible. We got to beat this guy no matter what we do. So if, just say, for example, Biden goes, I'm going to run and I'm committing to bring Stacey Abrams as my VP or something, like early, make some deal because she's not running for president. So it's not like have her leave the race. Like Senator Harris, you might say, oh, that would be a natural fit, but she's running for president. So you can't do it. But just say, and I don't know if Stacey Abrams would agree.
Well, that would have to overcome the discussions that will arise about Anita Hill and Senator Biden being the chairman of the committee that really handled that poorly. It'll have to overcome his role.
That'll be a big one?
What?
You think that'll be a big issue?
I think that could be a big issue in this era. His role in the crime bill. He was one of the key people in the '94 crime bill that was so controversial. He has a big record that will come out, and in the primaries, it's going to be a big issue. He's not going to walk through this, and so I think those are serious problems. And I'm not sure appointing Stacey Abrams or naming her as the VP is going to solve all of this. And look at it. I mean, Obama was the impossible candidate, and he won. He won twice, and he won in a robust
when he won
fashion.
Iowa, everything changed, right? In 2008, because I'm just finishing Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, and so much of it's about her, but so much is about them and the politics of that run in 2007 and 2008, but they begin 2007, and no one, or maybe it was early 2008, but no one's really on board. And all of a sudden, the polls start showing he's got traction in Iowa. And
he excited people. It wasn't
Right.
just a pragmatic, he's the guy who could win. It was something about him and what he represented that really brought voters out. And Democrats can do that again. This is the year they can do that, or 2020 will be. So they need to make sure they don't go for that experience card. That's what they did in 2004. Everyone was convinced the Democrats were going to beat George W. Bush. Kerry was the easy choice. He was the safe experience. He'll beat him. No. And so they better think, the Democrats, about what happened in 2004.
That's interesting as the model to warn all of us what happened. Because I remember Howard Dean being the exciting guy.
Right.
I remember Howard Dean saying something along the lines like, I represent the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
and he's saying
that's what he
essentially,
said.
I'm a progressive.
Right.
And the crowd goes crazy. And you realize, wow, at that time, there was a poll earlier, right before you came in, Steve Kornacki had on, showing Democratic Party in 2004 versus now. Liberal was a much smaller percentage of the overall Democratic base. Now, it's still not 50%, the self-described liberal of Democrats, but it's gone way up. It's like a plurality of the Democrats is there. So now, being the liberal wing, and I was on with Jennifer Rubin on Joy Reid's show on Sunday, and I'm like, all the energy I hear from my listeners are from the progressive side of the Democratic Party. Yeah. Jennifer Rubin's not even a Democrat. She's like pushing back. Well, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I was like, why are you even talking about this? You're a conservative. Like, why are we engaging? I'm telling you what progressives are saying.
Right.
And that the energy is on the left. So I don't believe a centrist or slightly center-left Democrat's going to animate our base going to 2020. And it was a very weird conversation. I was looking like Joe. I'm like, why is she so? And you know, she made her point. Her point was in 2018, so many of the Democrats that won in these kind of swing districts were not far left. That's absolutely true. I agree with that. I'm talking 2020. What's going to excite our base? And I agree with the idea of being excited about someone's going to make you knock on more doors, make more phone calls, maybe give more money, as opposed to we should support this person.
Right. No one says with Biden, I love Biden. I love everything he stands for. It's, well, I think he can win. He's the best in the poll. That's a dangerous way to go into campaigns. That's how Obama beat Hillary Clinton in the primaries in 2008. Everyone was saying that, and he didn't care. He said, I'm going to organize. I'm going to get people to come out. I'm going to give them something to vote for, and he won. So I think it's just it's a risky bet to make.
And it's funny, during the break, I said to Julian, I cannot recall, and if I make a mistake, I apologize. I can't recall anyone ever calling here when we talk about 2020 and someone going, I love Joe Biden. No one said a bad thing about Biden at all.
Yeah.
He's just there as the person. If he runs, he may end up being the nominee. We don't know. But I've heard passion for just about every other candidate. And on Twitter, too, in my engaging other progressives, I've never heard anyone say, man, that Biden's going to lead us. But a sense that if he becomes a nominee, we're all going to support him. And let's hope he picks a good VP candidate and runs on a progressive platform. So let's take a break, come back with our friend Julian Zelizer right after this.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right of our era because the right to vote preserves all other rights. It's not the Second Amendment. It's not guns. It's voting.
SiriusXM Progress. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here, Wednesday, February 20th. So, folks, look, at the end of the day, all of us, doesn't matter if you're Julian Zelizer, if you're Dean Obeidallah, you work all day, if you drive a truck, if you work in an office, you come home, you're hungry, and you're scrounging for food, and you're like, what are you going to pick? And what's good for you? And what can you cook in a quick time that's not going to be, like, bad for you, just because you're throwing everything together? Well, HelloFresh.com, the #1 meal kit in America, takes care of everything. If you worry about what you're eating, you can pick from the week before all their menus, vegetarian, fish, steak, you name it. You can see things like if you're concerned about sodium content. For many people, that's a concern. So you pick things that taste good and are good for you and easy to cook. Everything you need to cook in 30 minutes or less is right in that box waiting for you when you walk home. If it's fish, the entree is there. The side dishes are there. The spices are there. An apron is waiting for you and a really simple recipe book that anyone, you don't have to know how to cook. You can do it. There's pictures. It's simple. And you're going to love it for you or your family. You can order individual size or family sizes. It's your choice. And right now, you can try it. HelloFresh.com/Dean. $20 off your first 3 boxes, which is basically like trying it for free. And they know you're going to love it. So go to HelloFresh.com/Dean. That's hello, HELLO, fresh.com/Dean. Check it out. Go to the website. You're going to fall in love with the meals. I've eaten many of their meals, cooked them myself, cooked them with my girlfriend. They're excellent stuff. So, Julian, let's talk about Green New Deal. And as of now, big name Democrats, Kamala Harris, Liz Warren, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders have all signed on to the Green New Deal. And that's the good news. The other good news is 64% of Americans in a recent poll think climate change needs to be addressed. That's a really good thing.
Yep.
The problem is the Green New Deal's got a million things in it. It really is an aspirational document. It's not even legislation. It's a resolution. And what I wrote about for CNN is that in 2009, the Republicans did a great job defining the ACA in ridiculous ways. I mean, everyone remembers 2 words, death panel. We all remember death panel because Frank Luntz and then Sarah Palin used it very effectively. That became the lie of the year in 2009 by PolitiCoFact. The next year was all about Chuck Grassley saying government's going to pull the plug on grandma. And then it's a government takeover of healthcare, which was 2010's PolitiCoFact lie of the year. And it really became effective. And it became an albatross on Democrats going to that midterm. Now you have big name Democrats running in 2020 who have signed on, meaning it is fodder for the right. Is there some lesson from the ACA that they should learn from this?
Sure. The lesson from the ACA is don't let the opponents of an idea define what the idea is about. Because if you do, doesn't kill the idea, but it causes you endless political problems and political threats. And Republicans are fantastic at defining these issues, and they have a very elaborate media to support them and to get the message out. So Democrats shouldn't just assume this will go well. They can already see the problem, not just with the Fox News, but there's more interest in whether this is too radical and whether this makes Democrats socialist as the problem of extremism than the fact that a lot of the Republican Party has bought on to climate change denial,
right,
which is truly radical. That's the issue, but it doesn't receive nearly as much attention right now. So Democrats should already be wary. It's important they start to give a few ideas, big ideas that all the different candidates really like about what the Green New Deal was. That will help at least, define what the discussion is.
And to your point about media coverage, Media Matters quantified it last week that together, CNN and MSNBC's coverage, Fox News covered it 3 times more than those two combined, and it was all negative. And it was outrageous. And I even quoted stuff. Tucker Carlson calling it a religious document. It's part of Democrats' religion to take prosperity away from America. And Trump going at his rally last week, no more cows, no more planes. There's no more cows because of car farts, the farting of cows. No more planes. You're going to take a train everywhere. And the crowd's cheering, and it's defining it. And today, Congressman, I'll play this clip here quickly. Congressman David Cicilline from Rhode Island was on with Poppy Harlow about, are the Democrats veering to socialism? And that narrative is now seeping into the mainstream media. That's the concerning thing. Not that the right believes this, but normal people watching go, I think they might be too radical. Here's clip number 8.
Do you believe that the Democratic Party is moving more toward socialism? And are you supportive of that?
No, I don't think the Democratic Party is at all. Look, I think all of the announced Democratic candidates for president are capitalists, and we don't have any socialist candidates running for president in the Democratic Party. I think, those polling questions are always very curious, because if you look at Medicare and Social Security, some people describe those as socialist programs. They're deeply embedded in the American identity. People support them overwhelmingly, Republicans, Democrats, and independents. So I think, look, Democrats are committed to focusing on the issues that matter to working people in this country, that will make health care available to all Americans, that will drive down the costs of prescription drugs, that will deal with this very pernicious income inequality, that will get the government working for the people of this country again. Those are core Democratic values. I don't see any movement in the Democratic Party towards socialism at all. I know the president is making that argument. I think it's a silly one. I think he thinks it's politically advantageous, but there's just no evidence to support it.
Poppy Hart was trying to get in there going, it's not just Democrats. It is. So here's the thing. The right, we don't have to care what the right thinks, because America's never been more hyper-partisan. How do Democrats make the case to the center of America? Because I don't think people on the left care. You can call it whatever you want. If I like the policy, you can call it socialism. I don't care. I like Medicare. I like income inequality gap to get smaller.
Medicare, which was called socialized medicine in the 60s.
Oh, Ronald Reagan was like the spokesperson. He went around the country for Republicans and for the AMA. It was for the doctors to destroy the idea of Medicare. Should Democrats get out ahead here as well to make it clear what they're not socialist? Or is it just saying, forget these labels, here's what we're about?
I think that's the way they do it. The more they say we're not socialists, as you heard in that clip, the more the question comes back. Well, some people. So it's like you can't win that debate. So
really? So do not say we're not socialists.
I think the main point has to be, well, this is what we stand for. They aren't socialists. I mean, they're Democrats. And even the socialists are Democratic socialists in the Democratic Party. So they're Democrats. And I think you can say that all you want. It's not going to convince a conservative, and it will get you trapped in a mainstream media discussion, which is totally pointless for Democrats. They need to say we're for these things. Like when Elizabeth Warren put out universal health care. Sure, it's already been attacked as socialist, but that's a really concrete government program that a lot of families all over the country could say, wow, until they're in kindergarten, someone's going to help take care of them, and we're not going to go bankrupt. And that's how you counteract it. And let them call it what it is. They called socialized medicine. They said that was what Medicare was. But Lyndon Johnson, the Democrats, said, well, we'll give you this benefit. And that was more appealing in the end.
All right. So let's take a quick break. We'll come right back.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back to Dean Obadala Show. We're here with our friend Julian Zelizer. Julian, did you watch? By the way, there's so many other candidates we'll talk about in the future. Did you watch any of the Amy Klobuchar
I did.
town hall? What'd you think?
Well, if there's going to be a moderate, she's the one.
So if Joe Biden's her lane. I mean, we talk about lanes in politics. If Biden didn't run, and I think he's going to, but didn't, she would be the biggest beneficiary.
And you know, she has experience. She has this argument of a pragmatic liberal. I think she could actually be appealing for the party.
Just not to work for. It might be challenging.
Yeah, but that covers almost everyone.
I care less about that. I just asked Matt and Lauren how angry
you're
they
a
are.
tough guy, right?
Yeah. So
Julian,
thank you very much. But we have a glass, so I throw it at the glass. So, Julian, thanks very much for coming in. I appreciate it, especially in the bad weather. Folks, thanks for tuning in. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obadala. Follow Julian. What are you on Twitter?
Julian Zelizer.
Julian Zelizer. Spell it. Good luck with that. I'm at Dean Obadala. Be back tomorrow. Have a great night.